I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents.
It's just a day away. A leading Vatican watcher will look at what's expected to be an historic trip for the Pope.
And it was a miracle. We'll hear from a man at the center of this weekend's beatification of Cardinal Newman.
Plus, a book about Pope Benedict aimed at a younger crowd.
He spoke to them in a way that children can understand.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, tomorrow, for the very first time, a pope will make a state visit to the United Kingdom. So tonight, we devote most of our program to that trip and to previewing what's going to happen. We begin with some words of welcome from Britain's Prime Minister.
David Cameron today released a video message welcoming Pope Benedict and also addressing the people of his country.
Now, of course, not everyone will agree with everything the Pope says, but that should not prevent us from acknowledging that the Pope's broader message can help challenge us to ask searching questions about our society and how we treat ourselves and each other.
Benedict will have a busy schedule, touching down in Scotland, London, and in Birmingham, where, in the trip's high point, he'll beatify Cardinal John Henry Newman.
Well, for more on all of this, we're joined now by someone who will be a big part of the Net's coverage, Rocco Palmo. He's a Currents contributor and the author of the blog Whispers in the Loggia. Rocco, thanks for joining us.
It's great to finally be here.
In the flesh, yeah. Rocco.
Right here, face to face. Well, of course, this is going to be a very big 4 days coming up for Pope Benedict and for the people of the UK. What can we look forward to seeing? What are some of the highlights, first off?
Well, I think he's basically going to be shot out of a cannon tomorrow morning, beginning in Edinburgh. Meeting with the Queen. Large mass initially called for 100,000 people turnout, with Susan Boyle singing for him. Then going down to London, a mass indoor mass in Westminster Cathedral, meeting with the school kids of Britain, and then the climax, the two climaxes, a vigil in Hyde Park for a crowd of around 80,000, at least was initially predicted, and also finally Birmingham, where, as the Vatican said the other day, the trip reaches its full significance, the climax, Cardinal Newman's beatification.
Right. So we know that those are some of the events that he's going to be doing and some of the masses that he's going to be having. But talk to us a little bit about the tenor in the UK that he is entering, because there have been a lot of polls that we've talked about the majority of people perhaps, initially not looking forward to the Pope's visit, or some of them saying that we really don't want to be the taxpayers, that are funding his trip here. What do you think? You've been following these UK papers.
Well, there's been a lot in the press, and some of it seems to have come from a minority, which, the louder you scream, the more coverage you get. So I think the turnout's going to be an indicator, but also it has been rough because of the confluence of the sexual abuse scandal in Europe. I mean, even just Monday, the Belgian church released a report detailing 400 cases, and that was used as another kind of saw inserted by the British media, much of the British media, into the papal visit to the UK. But the other... at the same time, there is a sense of excitement because it's the first state visit. It's only the second time. We're used to having popes come here to the States. It's been almost 30 years since John Paul II visited Britain. And there's a sense of, for Catholics, it's a moment of arrival. Remember, he's going to give a speech on Friday in Westminster Hall, where St. Thomas More was charged with treason and beheaded for remaining loyal to Rome. So we've come a long way in 500 years in Britain.
Yeah, and things have changed a lot since 1982 as well, when Pope John Paul made his visit there. And that, of course, is going to be kind of one of the themes that we'll be talking about throughout these 4 days. But also, you mentioned a minute ago, as you were going down the list of sort of the highlights, the original estimates of, the attendance that was expected at some of these events. They're now saying that they don't quite expect maybe as many as they initially expected. Tell us a little bit about that, why that might be.
Well, I think, it's funny, when the Holy Father came here in 2008 to New York and to Washington, our largest venue was 65,000 people. We have more Catholics between Boston and Washington than they do in the whole United Kingdom. We planned well. There, I think there was a sense of perhaps over-enthusiasm, because it's a lot to get around the country. Some people are going to have to drive 24 hours by bus who will actually go to the Masses. We had our trip in the spring, his was in the fall. This one's in the fall. It's going to be in the 40s, they're saying, for the Mass in Glasgow on Thursday. So there's all of that, and also pilgrims are going to have to pay to help the church defray the cost of the visit. clear. And plus, this Holy Father likes more intimate crowds, so it may end up working out. You know, one thing, but for all of us in the pew back home, one interesting thing that these masses are going to see is the premiere, the world debut of the new translated Mass in English that all our parishes are going to be having next year. So if you want to start learning how to sing the Gloria and the Holy, Holy, Holy with the new text, here's your chance.
There you go.
Right, right, absolutely. But we also know, of course, that he is meeting with the head of the Anglican Church, and talk to us about how you think that's going to go, given some of the reasons that we've heard recently about, from the Western reasoning, if you will, about why the Pope invited some of the Anglicans to the Catholic Church.
Well, there's a very warm personal tie between this Pope and Archbishop Rowan Williams, the Archbishop of Canterbury. They're actually going to be presiding for the first time together in Westminster Abbey over evening prayer on Friday night. But the Anglican grassroots, the Anglican base, if you will, sees Anglican Order Shady Boost the Roma initiative as a kind of poaching. But however, it's important to remember, this is a response to the petition of Anglicans who have wished to enter the Catholic Church in groups. We didn't go after them or anything like that. If anything, it's just a way of making it easier for them to join us and to accept their wish to join us. Cardinal Newman obviously is a key figure in this. One interesting thing is that his feast day has been set not for the day of his death, August 11th, already the Feast of St. Clair, patroness of television, but so we don't want to overshadow her. Right. But for October the 9th, which is coming up, it's the anniversary of his conversion. So there may be some ecumenical repercussions to that.
All right. Well, Rocco, well, if you need to know anything about anything going on with the Vatican, the Pope, the trip to the UK, Rocco's the man to ask. And we're glad to have you here today. And of course, we'll be hearing much more from you over the days to come.
Oh, yeah. Looking forward to having fun.
Rocco, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it. Now, Rocco will also be writing all about all of this, the trip, all the goings on in the UK with the Pope's trip there on his blog. It's called Whispers in the Loggia. Be sure to check it out at the website address on your screen.
But stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. When we return, we'll have the day's headlines, including some surprises in last night's primary elections.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up a bit later, a book about the Pope for younger audiences just in time for the UK trip. I'll talk to the book's illustrator.
But first, let's turn to the day's headlines. Well, there were some surprising election results after yesterday's primaries, with some establishment Republicans being ousted in favor of more conservative Tea Party candidates. Here in New York, Carl Palladino clinched the Republican nomination for governor by defeating former Congressman Rick Lazio. Just a few weeks ago, Lazio had a big lead in the polls, but Palladino ended up winning by 24 percentage points. He now goes on to face the Democratic Attorney General Andrew Cuomo in November's general election. But the big surprise last night was the upset win of Christine O'Donnell in the Republican primary for the Senate in Delaware. Tea Party favorite O'Donnell beat 9-term Congressman Mike Castle. O'Donnell was considered a long shot for the nomination, but she got big Tea Party support and an endorsement from Sarah Palin. Now, the new Republican nominee is a devout Catholic who previously headed up a group that advocated for abstinence. As head of that group, O'Donnell also spoke out publicly against masturbation. And this weekend, the diocese is sponsoring a forum at St. Kevin's Parish in Flushing. It's called Current Politics and the Defense of Life. Local candidates will be there to make presentations and take questions as well. For more information, you can go to our blog, Riding the Wave. It's our website, currentsny.net. Well, on to Afghanistan now, where police fired warning shots to break up a crowd of protesters angry over incidents of Quran burning in the U.S. The AP reports 35 police officers and at least 10 protesters were hurt. Afghan police say the Taliban is using recently released video of Americans burning the Quran to turn Muslim anger into protests against the government there ahead of this week's elections. Now, meantime, in Iran, stores were closed across the country in protest of Quran burning on the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Thousands of people took to the streets of Tehran to protest as well. Now, although Florida Pastor Terry Jones called off his Quran burning plans in the face of international condemnation, anti-Islam protesters in the U.S. reportedly burned copies of the Muslim holy book on Saturday. Well, meantime, during his general audience today, Pope Benedict called for an end to attacks against Christians in the wake of Quran burning incidents.
Seguo con preoccupazione gli avvenimenti verificatisi in questi giorni in varie regioni dell'Asia meridionale, specialmente in India, in Pakistan ed in Afghanistan. Prego per le vittime e chiedo che il rispetto della libertà religiosa e la logica della riconciliazione e della pace prevalgano sull'odio e sulla violenza.
Well, recent violence in several Middle Eastern countries, reportedly because of Quran desecration, has led to the deaths of 18 Christians.
Most Americans now say same-sex couples fall into their definition of family. That is the finding of a survey by the authors of a new book about Americans' views of sexuality and relationships. The study finds that between 2003 and 2010, the number of Americans who view same-sex couples that have children as families rose from 54% to 68%. Meanwhile, most people in the U.S. do not consider unmarried cohabitating couples as families, regardless of their sexual orientation, unless they have children. And finally, as millions of Catholics in the UK get ready for Pope Benedict's visit this week, security is a top priority, especially the security of the pontiff himself. Reporter Max Foster went to investigate the lengths police are going to for the Pope's protection and see the Pope Mobile put through its paces.
Well, this is as close as we're allowed to get to the Pope Mobile. We're not allowed to film inside for security reasons, but we have been given some technical details.
Basically, it's a sports utility vehicle, a Mercedes-Benz M-Class, I think, and you can see what they've done on the back of it. Bulletproof glass, armoured side panels and undercarriages. It's got a top speed of very fast. I'm not sure the details, but very fast.
Really?
And
so they can speed away if they need to?
They can speed away if they need to.
But it's always seen going very slowly, isn't it?
The normal speed, I'm told, is 6 miles an hour, which strikes me as being very fast for those guys cantering along beside it.
What do we know about the number plates and what it says?
Well, the number plate, at least part of the number plate is SCV, which is Stato della Città del Vaticano. So it's the Vatican city-state. That's what the number plate means.
Is that the only one registered with that?
Well, it's the only one you're likely to see with that number plate round at these times, I think.
And in terms of the driver, I understand it's going to be a British police officer. Nerve-wracking task.
It's a big responsibility. I gather that he's been training, he or she. I'm not sure if it's a man or a woman. It's good. It's a Brit. I think we know they're going to know their directions and they'll be driving on the correct side of the road. So I'm sure the Pope's in good hands.
And an unusual car to drive. So I guess it's got some unusual features that you have to get used to.
Yes, I haven't had a look inside, so I'm sure that this person's had all the time they need to get ready for this.
You're not going to let us see inside, are you, for security reasons?
I'm not sure of the exact details of what's going to be happening, but I haven't been able to have a go myself.
Just tell us about the symbolism of this vehicle and what it actually means for a trip.
The Pope Mobile, I think, is an iconic vehicle, a bit like a London bus. And it's not just the curiosity value, it's the fact that this is the way that most people, ordinary Catholics, millions of people, actually see the Pope. That he's not just in the formal events, he wants to go out into the streets and to meet people.
Are you allowed to say Pope Mobile? I thought John Paul II didn't like that term.
Well, I knew he had a bit of a thing with that phrase. He felt we should have something a bit more dignified, but I'm happy to go with the flow. I think the phrase is here to stay.
It's out there now, isn't it?
Glad he likes the term. I think it's appropriate.
That's right. I mean, it's going to stick, I think.
I think so. Stay tuned. There's more on the Pope's trip coming up.
Just ahead, he's played a part in Cardinal Newman's path to sainthood. We'll hear his story. Welcome back. Well, a highlight of the Pope's trip is the beatification of Cardinal John Henry Newman, a 19th century Anglican priest who converted to Catholicism and became one of the most important writers and theologians of the modern age. But this moment wouldn't actually be happening without a miracle, the one confirmed miracle that is needed before someone can be declared blessed.
Well, that miracle happened to a man right here in this country. Deacon Jack Sullivan from the Archdiocese of Boston, somewhere I know you're very familiar with. He'll be in England for the beatification, and he'll proclaim the gospel at the Mass there. But before he left, I had a chance to speak with him by phone about this remarkable event and his unique connection to Cardinal Newman. Deacon Jack, thank you so much for being here on Currents today. We really appreciate your time, sir.
It's my pleasure.
Well, first of all, right out of the gate, I have to ask you how it feels for you that your healing is going to lead now to the advancement of the cause, or has led to the advancement of the cause already, for the beatification of John Henry Newman.
It's mind-boggling, actually. As they say, I just asked for a simple divine favor. at a time when I was seriously afflicted, and my back problem was so serious that I was teetering on paralysis. And yet, you know, I had to work. I was also attending the diaconate formation program in the Archdiocese of Boston that begins every September. It's a 4-year program. And this problem began after I had successfully completed my 2nd year, and was looking forward to going into my 3rd year.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about your condition? You said that you were teetering sort of on paralysis there. What was the back condition that you had?
Basically, the lower vertebrae in the lumbar area and the discs were literally squeezing the life out of my spinal cord. With any effort, with any exertion, you know, the spine could be severed,
wow,
which would end up in say, lifelong paralysis.
So what then led you, when you had this condition, what led you to pray to Cardinal Newman? I mean, most people probably pray to Mary or maybe St. Jude. What led you to pray to Cardinal Newman?
My back was so bad that actually there were bulges above and below the affected area in my spine that I needed immediate surgery, and scheduled a surgery for the 12th of September, which would be the same time I was to return to classes. I came home dejected, demolished actually, because I love this program so much, and I was so looking forward to returning to classes and then ultimately to be ordained. And to get my mind off this tragedy, I put on the TV set, flicked the channels, came upon EWTN, and at that program they were talking about Cardinal Newman, and they had mentioned the difficulties that Newman encountered in his vocation. So naturally, I was so despondent, I prayed, this is the exact words I used, "Please, Cardinal Newman, help me to walk so that I can return to classes and be ordained."
Wow.
And the following morning, I woke up totally pain-free, able to walk upright with strength in my legs, whereas before, for months, I was in agony, all bent over like a pretzel. So this is how I found out about Newman, in a sense, by accident.
Yeah, yeah, and it's amazing how quickly that happened as well, like how quickly you turned around. Now, you're going to be reading the Gospel at the Mass of Beatification coming up here pretty soon. Are you nervous about that?
Extremely.
Thank you for your honesty.
but Newman has helped me so many times in the past. I was pain-free throughout my 3rd year of classes. Right after the last class, the pain came back with all of the fury that it had before. I had the surgery on August 9th. They found complications in that surgery, which means I'm in the same spot I was the year before.
Yeah.
And after 5 days after the surgery, I was in tremendous pain. I prayed again to Newman. And suddenly, I felt a tremendous sensation of intense heat all over, in a strong tingling feeling throughout my body. I also felt an indescribable sense of joy and peace, as though I were in God's presence, and a strong sense of confidence and determination that finally I could walk. And when this beautiful occurrence subsided, I realized I was standing upright. And I yelled to the nurse, "I have no more pain." And at that moment, I walked out of my room perfectly normal, up and down the corridors of the hospital. Within a few days, I was discharged that day. Within a few days, I'm walking a mile. I returned to classes on time, to everybody's astonishment.
That's just an amazing story. One last question before we have to wrap it up here. What good do you think can come from all of this media attention on yourself and on Cardinal Newman as well?
Not so much myself, but on Cardinal Newman. He has so much to say in reference to the problems that we're encountering today. The one thing that Newman stood for, perhaps one of the greatest writers in church history, was the idea that there is such a thing as objective truth.
It's a very powerful story that you have, and thank you for coming on, Deacon Jack Sullivan. Thank you very much for being here to share the story with us and with all of our viewers. We really appreciate your time.
You're more than welcome.
Thanks.
Quite a story there. Well, stay with us. We'll be right back.
When we return, children can get an education from Pope Benedict, courtesy of a new picture book.
Anne, thank you so much for joining us today on Currents.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
And you have done the watercolors for this lovely book, Friendship with Jesus. And all of these pictures are very gentle and very soft and really show, I think, a lot of the care that was put into them as well as the intention behind each one. Why did you decide to write this book, or to, I should say, illustrate this book?
Well, I had been familiar with some of the writings of Pope Benedict after he became elected Pope, and they had really resonated with me. And when I heard about this meeting that he was going to have with young children, I was really fascinated with the idea of a scholar and a theologian meeting with little children. And he spoke to them about a very profound topic, but in a way that children can understand. And it was so refreshing and so lovely in a meeting with these children. And I thought what he touched on was very important. And I thought it would really be great for children to hear the words, have a little lesson from the Holy Father, and you know, turn it into a book.
So is that really what sort of motivated you, is to kind of use it as a furthering of a teaching tool for younger children?
Absolutely, yeah. I didn't do the writing myself. Amy Wellborn, who's a well-known writer and blogger, edited it, but I did the illustrations. And I contacted her after having heard this lovely talk, and I thought, you know, I just thought maybe she would be interested in working on the project with me, and to my delight she was, and that's how it happened.
Right, so that was an excellent collaboration. And then also, you are from the area, and you now live nearby as well, but you did have an opportunity to actually meet a VIP recently, right?
Yes, I did. Yes. When my daughter, who's actually a student at St. John's University, was studying in Rome, and we had the opportunity to go and visit her, and we were able to, at the general audience, able to actually give the Pope a copy of the book, and he looked at it, and he recognized himself in some of the images, and he seemed to really appreciate it. He was very grateful, and I hope, happy to see that his words have another venue.
Well, this was recently published, so it is available, and parents may want to incorporate this into you know, their time with their children. Who do you think is a good age, maybe at this point, for a parent to think about?
Well, you know, it's obviously addressed to children who are about to receive or have received their Holy Communion. So I would think the primary grades would be perfect. But you know, even younger children, it would, as a story that could be read to, it is a picture book. I think it would be great for younger children as well.
Well, tell us about your life as an artist and how you even came to be doing these kinds of things.
Well, actually I grew up in Douglaston in Queens. I went to St. Anastasia School, and I always had an interest in art, and I just knew that that's what I would end up doing, and I studied fine arts, and really this is the first time I've illustrated a children's book. I've done illustration of other kinds, but this is the first time. But I guess I was so inspired and motivated by the story that it started me in a new direction, for which I'm very grateful.
And obviously, you know, Jesus and his connection with little children is so terrific, and as you so poignantly illustrate here in the book. What do you think it has to teach us about communion in general with those who are younger than we are, and perhaps what they have to teach us and not just what we have to show them?
Well, the story is told through a series of questions that the children asked the Pope, specifically about communion. And they're really the same questions that all children have, and really I think adults have too. Very basic questions about what is the meaning of the Eucharist, and Pope Benedict, I think, really throughout all of his teaching has focused on this idea of friendship with Jesus, a relationship, an encounter with Christ. And he really explains to children that when we receive communion, we begin a lifelong friendship with Christ. And I think you'll see that in all the questions and all the answers, that that's really the essence of the book.
Well, friendship is never a bad thing. So thank you so much, Anne, for being with us here on Currents today. The book is Friendship with Jesus. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.